premières vraies vacances, j'en rêvais depuis longtemps. Et cette année, j'ai la chance de partir sans mes parents. Ce n'est pas que ma famille soit vraiment collée montée, mais moi, je suis grande fille.
On our first morning in France, we drove north from Marseille in a small blue Citroën hybrid. It was Saturday, and there was a market in Pernes-la-Fontaine. We were lost in France.
Le droit d'être décoiffé, j'aurais le droit d'aller me baigner sans bonnet. Mes premières vraies vacances, moi je veux en profiter.
The same afternoon, we continued up the road to the village of Carène, where we had rented a house. We found the village practically deserted. In October, the tourist season was over, the one épicerie was closed, as was the only restaurant. Then came the Mistral. This cold, raw wind starts in the Alps and blows down the valley of the Rhone periodically. The Mistral continued for the next 6 days, each day seeming colder than the last. Mistral or not, we drove towards Vaison-la-Romaine, where we encountered a mysterious group of stones at the edge of town. Driving clockwise around the Dentelle de Montmirail, we came across a chateau. La Barroux was built in the 12th century by the lords of Vaucluse. Driving across the Col de Suzette, we stopped to take in the view and taste some wine. We stopped in Gigondas for some more wine tasting, wrote some postcards, and had lunch at La Florette. The mushroom and foie gras soup was one of the best things either of us had ever tasted. As the Mistral continued day after day, Josie and I got used to the little house with the big view. Between day trips around the Vaucluse, we were able to read several books each. I sketched the sights, and Josie kept a journal recording visits to the traveling markets. One of our day trips was to Orange. We found a parking spot, then walked to the ancient Roman theater. 2,000 years ago the theater was built. It had a good run of almost 400 years until the Romans got religion in the form of Christianity. The righteous frowned upon the pagan spectacle and were likely appalled by the nudity of the actresses. After that, the theater was abandoned completely. It was sacked and pillaged by the barbarians and was used as a defensive post in the Middle Ages. During the 16th century religious wars, it became a refuge for the townspeople. After a week of screaming mistral and 6-degree temperatures, Josie and I arrived in Luberon. The sun was out, the wind was down, and we warmed up on the terrace of the Café de la Fontaine.
C'est merveilleux, à côté des étoiles, j'habite à 2 pas du ciel toujours bleu. Je tendrai chez moi votre visite, là-haut sous les toits, dans mon logis, tous les jours.
In the days that followed, we drove to various villages and chateaux, but the high point of each day was the return to La Petite Maison.
Look, there's a dog in the water.
Outside of town, a longer drive took us across the Vaucluse to Saint-Remy. We had arranged a private tour of the Hôpital Saint-Paul-de-Moselle, where Van Gogh went to recover from his shaving accident. Marie-Charlotte Bouton made us feel like we knew Vincent as well as we know his paintings.
And Van Gogh rooms was here in this building. So this place is an ancient monastery built by the monks in the 10th century. And that was a monastery till the French Revolution. And they were confiscated, spoliated by the revolutionaries.
It was raining cats and dogs that day, but Marie-Charlotte made the sun shine.
Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui se perd sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose.
We stayed in Luberon on Friday for the weekly market. Josie met Hélène Paris, a local potter and a kindred spirit. We bought Mediterranean oysters, Mont Ventoux cheese, and a wine called Le Cul de Loup. Literally, this means the wolf's asshole, but the wine seller kindly explained that it is Provençal slang for isolated place like the middle of nowhere. Back at the house, we sat on the porch in the sun, ate, drank, and were very content. In a few days, we would be taking a train to Paris, so we wandered through villages like Cucaron, with a beautiful basin just outside its medieval walls.
Des ennuis, des chagrins s'effacent, heureux, heureux, en mourir. Quand il me prend dans ses bras.
Josie bought pottery in Roussillon.
Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours. Et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur.
We explored the chateau at Luberon.
Je connais la voix.
took in the huge antique market in Ile-sur-le-Sorque.
Deux secondes. On va jouer ici. Faut faire vite là. Vous êtes prêts? Avec celui-là, faites fort. Attends, Et voilà l'écho.
Non, c'est pas vidéo gag. Non, c'est pas vidéo gag. Passez une bonne journée, messieurs.
More on this side.
Voilà.
All too soon we had to say au revoir to the little house by the fountain. We packed up and returned the car to the Avignon TGV station, and we were on our way to Paris. We had rented a tiny apartment at 25 Rue Charlot in the Marais. The day after we moved in, our daughter Susanna and our son-in-law Yadir arrived from Barcelona.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
On All Hallows Eve, we visited Père Lachaise Cemetery. We paid our respects at the tombs of Géricault, Edith Piaf, and Victor Noir. Monsieur Noir was a journalist who was shot dead by Pierre Bonaparte, a grandnephew of Napoleon. His bronze memorial acquired a reputation for enhancing the fertility of women who rubbed the well-endowed statue. That evening, we dined with the Gaudrat family. Christian and Anne Gaudrat have been friends with Josie and I for 30 years.
Yadir, est-ce que tu veux du café? Do you want coffee? Yes? Bon. Alors vous êtes déjà deux.
Et Susanna,
Ça sera pas un expresso. Non, ici, ça sera du café américain. Moi, je sais pas.
Each November, the Brocante d'Antiquité sets up along the Porte de l'Arsenal, next to the Bastille monument. We drank vin chaud from paper cups as we wandered through this vast hoard of French history.
Maintenant partout j'entends des boniments avec plus ou moins d'accent. Si l'anglais me dit I love you, je réponds mon petit vois-tu, chez nous on dit je suis chippé pour vous. À l'espagnol amoureux me dit yo t'aime, yo te veux, je réponds t'as du retard mon vieux. Et quand un Allemand me dit « Och, Fräulein, wollen Sie ?» Afin de couper court, je réplique à tous ces discours. Je suis né dans le faubourg Saint-Denis et je suis resté une vraie gosse de Paris. Vos promesses et tous vos serments, je n'y crois pas car c'est du boniment. Mon air voyeur, mes yeux moqueurs de midinette sont pleins de bonheur et je garde mon cœur car je vous le répète. Je suis né dans le faubourg Saint-Denis, faut pas me la faire, je suis une gosse de Paris. Un jour un riche Brésilien me dit vraiment vous avez du chien ici.
On Armistice Day, we joined a line outside St. Eustace Church and ended up hearing Mozart's Requiem, played by the French Army Chorus and Orchestra. After Susanna and Yadir had returned to California, Josie and I wandered aimlessly around Paris for another week. On a cold, dark Monday, with most museums closed, we took the metro past the Quai d'Austerlitz to the Jardin des Plantes. Almost by accident, we tried the door of the darkened Paleontology Museum. The door swung open, and we were greeted by the most lurid sculpture I've ever seen. Beyond stretched an immense Art Nouveau hall filled with skeletons of every size, era, and species. Thousands of smaller specimens lined the walls, including embryos, both animal and human, both normal and deformed. We'd stumbled into the creepiest and coolest museum ever. This place was very French, the beautiful and the grotesque in utter harmony. Josie and I were home. We were found in France.
D'accord pour la balade en bateau, d'accord pour qu'il m'offre des gâteaux, d'accord. Mais s'il m'en demande trop, pas d'accord. Mes premières vraies vacances, je ne veux pas les gâcher en écoutant ces romances qui ne chantent qu'un été. Car je pense, quand j'y pense, que c'est trop pour 15 jours. Des premières vraies vacances et un premier grand amour. Des premières vraies vacances et un premier grand amour.